The Iowa Hawkeyes this season are replacing a lot of players, but they still have high expectations. With a big portal class coming in and a number of star players returning, there are a lot of expectations for the Iowa Hawkeyes in 2026. We are excited to talk through a season preview for the Hawkeyes, going through narratives, storylines, offense, defense. What are we most confident in? What are we least confident in? And then finally finishing it off with some schedule talk, floor, ceiling, schedule, and get through it all. And of course, I have Zach Guggenheim here to break it all down with me. Zach, as we go into this season for the Iowa Hawkeyes, what are some of the biggest storylines and narratives that you are thinking about for the Iowa Hawkeyes and Kirk Ferentz?
I was leaning in, but I realized that my face got cut off, so I'm not going to lean in anymore. Playoffs.
All right.
Can they make the playoffs?
Yeah. Is
That's
that
it.
a realistic storyline to go at? Because they are the team that returns the least amount of starters in the Big Ten. We've talked about it a number of times on this show, but to me, an Iowa Hawkeye team returning so few starters from last season in an unresolved quarterback competition, it does feel like, okay, are we jumping a little bit too ahead of ourselves talking about playoffs?
No. Now, could they, and I think we'll see this in the floor and the ceiling, like I think they could fall flat on their face because quarterback, offensive line, defense, there's a lot of new faces. But the schedule looks pretty doable. Maybe the most doable schedule for Iowa in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And which is saying something because they're in the old Big Ten West, but probably the most favorable schedule that they could get in the new world Big Ten. Iowa State is down. I mean, they're not the same team that they've been under Matt Campbell. And maybe here's a hot take. Is this the best the skill positions have been for Iowa, like since 2006, 2005?
I mean, they've had some really good cornerbacks and stuff like that on the defensive side. So I don't know if this is the best skill
Offensive.
positions on that side, but
Offensive.
offensively,
Offensive.
yeah, Reese Vanderzee, Kamari Moulton, obviously L.J. Phillips, the FCS transfer. You got other wide receivers as well, obviously, but Reese Vanderzee is kind of the one that stands out to me personally the most. So it's pretty interesting to think about. Obviously, Tony Diaz, we've talked about him a number of times on this show
Mm-hmm.
as well. It is very interesting to think about what does an Iowa team with good offensive line play, good skill position, but an unresolved quarterback position on offense, what does that look like? Tim Lester has done a phenomenal job at Iowa producing offense in time when people just kind of throw Iowa to the side and say they're not much of an offensive team, which I think is a mistake nowadays. So I do think this is some of the best group of skill position players they've had since COVID. Before COVID, they had some really good skill position players before that as well. But definitely the Brian Ferentz effect really kind of impacted that, and it feels like they're healing themselves in the skill position area ever since that now.
Why would you mention that name on this podcast?
I'm so sorry.
All the Iowa fans just unsubscribed. I just unsubscribed.
No,
Get
no.
that, get that name out of your mouth. Ugh.
But overall, I think I was in a good position here. Let's talk about offense and defense. If we're looking at the offense for this Iowa team, I think you have a number of different areas you could go for where you're most comfortable or where you're most confident. And then there's a couple of different areas you could go here for least confident. I'm pretty sure we're going to be simultaneous on the least confident here as we enter it into the season. But Zach, I'll give you first dibs on the most confident. Where are you most confident with this Iowa team?
So I mentioned the skill positions before. I'm I'm gonna go outside the box here though. Only two starters return on the offensive line, but the projected starting lineup for the offensive line are all seniors and juniors. Cade Piper and Trevor Lauck return as starters. And I
Two of the
just
best offensive linemen in the Big Ten.
yeah, and I just and the other guys have experience. It's not like they haven't played at all. They haven't played any snaps. I just have a hard time believing that an Iowa offensive line will not be at least uh, effective. Like I just have a hard time. I know they were the best. I think they're the best offensive line in the Big Ten last year. Well, at least one of top three. Indiana
I
fans
would
might
say
come after me after that, but
I would say they were the best. I think Indiana
yeah,
did well for themselves, but I would say they were the best.
yeah. But I think Iowa, like I think they could still be a top five, top three offensive line in the conference. Which I think if that's the case, then all the more confident you should be in that running back room.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a big part of this kind of happening, right? Is what does the quarterback or what does the running back room look like, and how are they going to be able to produce behind a good offensive line? Because the offensive line can be fantastic, but you got to have the running backs behind them. Now, Kamari Moulton has been a proven product. LJ Phillips did a really good job at South Dakota. I think it was just South Dakota. I don't think it was South Dakota State. And so I think you have proven productive players there, and that's kind of what Kirk Ferentz did in the portal here. He didn't really care about where they came from. He just really cared about how did you produce before you came here. He did that in he's done that in almost every position group other than the offensive line. And to me, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the offensive line does not seem broken anytime soon. They have taken those boys from the recruiting classes. They have beefed them up. They've got them in the strength and conditioning program, and they don't go into the portal and go get guys very often because they don't have to. They do a very good job of developing their offensive linemen, bringing them up, and I think this 5-for-5 rule that we just got in the NCAA is only going to help Iowa have better offensive linemen, especially when their guys are not coming in from other places and having to grow chemistry once they get here. So I think this is a really good situation for Iowa on the offensive line, not just this year but moving forward. I think you have a really good situation with tight end as well. So if I have to say a most confident area, I'm not just saying offensive line. I'm saying line of scrimmage altogether. DJ Vanami, he is a former walk-on tight end who's projected to be very good this season, and you got some other tight ends in there as well. Addison Estranga, he was playing for them before his injury as well. Zach Ortworth, obviously him kind of the same way. So I think you got a pretty deep tight end room here in addition to a very good offensive line as far as I can tell. So if you're Iowa, you got the skill position, you got the offensive line, you got the tight ends, you got the running back. Zach, you just need the quarterback.
And that's where we're least confident.
Yes. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that I think either of Ryan Hecklinski or Hank Brown is going to be bad. I'm not exactly thrilled with the way that Hank Brown looked in that Indiana game last season, but he also came in a very tough situation. It's his first time playing playing in a high pressure situation that season, so it was a difficult situation, and he is a year older now, a redshirt junior. So as far as I'm concerned, this is two guys who should have enough experience to come in and play well. We just haven't exactly seen them do that yet.
When you mentioned that we haven't seen it, I mean, they've played 64 snaps combined, right? Hank Brown, 55, Jeremy Hecklinski, 9. So it's really experience. And that's the biggest thing that we need to see is, can one of these guys take the reins from this job, establish themselves as not just a starter, but as the leader of that team, and then get experience, especially, if you look at the first part of their schedule, like Iowa State should not be a problem. I know it's a rivalry, but their entire roster got gutted when Matt Campbell left. So you have Northern Illinois, you have Iowa State, and Northern Iowa. You have 3 games to get whoever your starter is ready. Somebody's got to take the reins of that job, and that's what I'm looking for. Because I think if someone does and they make the right choice, then I think Iowa could be a really good team offensively. And really, it's those 3 games after Northern Iowa are like the main competition. Like the last six are also difficult, but if Iowa wants to be a playoff team, at Michigan, Ohio State, at Washington, like that, those are the three prove it games. You don't got to win them all, but you got to do something against those three teams, particularly the two on the road. That's where it's big time for Iowa.
Yeah, we'll talk schedule here in just a minute. Let's switch on over to defense, and then we'll get into the schedule stuff. On defense for Zach, kind of what Phil Parker loves. Phil Parker, he's got his defense together. He's got his defense ready. He doesn't have the most returning starters in the world, but he's got some young defensive ends. Epinesa, Iosi, I think he's pronounced. Epinesa, he's over there at right end for you. You got Bryce Hawthorne there in the middle, so you got a pretty good defensive line there. And then you've got some brand new linebackers who some of them are older and experienced, some of them are a little bit newer, and then a very experienced secondary: Deshaun Lee, Tyler Brown, Zach Lutmer. I mean, this is a situation with the defense where I think I feel pretty good about the defensive line. I'm a little bit less confident in the linebackers, and then I'm just the most confident in Phil Parker's secondary this year, as I typically am for many reasons.
I mean, we both picked Iowa safeties for our All Big Ten draft, which, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's a lot of fun. You'll probably make fun of some of our picks, but that's because we had to pick a player from every team. So, that being said, yeah, I think safety is where I'm most confident, right? Zach Lutmer and Tyler Brown, both really good players. Tyler Brown comes over from JMU. And I think the corners will be good too, but I'm especially high on those safeties.
Yeah, I think a safety-driven defense, is what Phil Parker, when he's got safeties like this, he's going to love having those guys kind of be the leader of the defense and run the operations that way. And, I mean, how can you not trust a guy like Zach Lutmer? He's going to be in the slot quite a bit for you. So, he's obviously going to be reliable there, playing closer to line of scrimmage as well, doing some coverage. And so with the defense, the defensive line does concern me a little bit, but Iowa always seems to have that figured out, so I'm not too concerned about it. Linebackers are always kind of the same way, but we'll see what this defense looks like with Phil Parker, but that's kind of all you have to say is like the two words Phil Parker, and you are like, okay, well, yeah, I think honestly for me, Zach, like less than the defense, and we don't really talk about this with most other teams. We kind of bring it up if there's a few narratives, but I think it has to be brought up with Iowa. It's the special teams, right? A completely new special teams unit here. You have a completely new coordinator, and Palizzi is going to be your new special teams coordinator as you lost your special teams coordinator over to Michigan State. LeVar Woods being the assistant head coach over there for Pat Fitzgerald. That obviously hurts a little bit, but Iowa has a pretty deep coaching staff, and Kirk Ferentz knows what he's doing with the special teams. You're looking at a new kicker, the North Dakota State transfer, Eli Ozig. You got a punter battle going on here, some returning battles going on. I mean, I think Zach Lutmer is going to end up being the guy in the punt return and the kick return situations. So you might have some challenges here and there with that, but overall, this is a pretty interesting situation for a team that's been as reliant on special teams. Iowa kind of going into the season with some not brand new special teams, but some different faces on special teams than we've seen them have more of in a while.
Yeah, I will say, like Eli Ozig, I know he's coming from North Dakota State, but he was 16 of 18. His long was 54 yards. So at least in the place kicking department, it seems like they got a pretty reliable kicker. 62 out of 63 on extra points. So he was at least reliable at North Dakota State, and it's not like they use different footballs in FCS. Although I was going to say North Dakota State is joining FBS now, but that's besides the point. But I agree with you, not just with the personnel. I like personnel I'm not as concerned about. It's the coaching and the pedigree. Like Kirk Ferentz is kind of similar to that Jim Tressel-esque mold where like the most important play is the punt. Can they actually still rely on that? We're not sure. So I'm with you on that. The other thing I'm briefly concerned about on more of the defensive side of the ball. Not necessarily a position group, just youth and inexperience, right? I think the defensive line, like what have we been talking about a lot in a number of these team previews and in our live shows is that old man strength beats young new hotness in this new world. You have a lot of new hotness on this line, right?
A lot of new hotness over there at Iowa. I like it,
Yeah,
Zach.
Men in Black 2 reference. Yeah, old and
Well, we don't
busted.
need this young new hotness on our defensive
Yeah.
line. Give
Well,
us.
you got old and busted, new hotness, but the old and busted is actually old and beating the crap out of the young new hotness.
If I would
Kinda
have thought about young and hotness talk by one of these Big Ten teams, I would have picked like Oregon, maybe Nebraska with something Matt Rowe said or something. I did not peg that as the Iowa preview for us to get into, but I'm here for it. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, is that going to be the thumbnail? New hotness.
It should be. It should be.
But anyway, like you just have a lot of younger guys, and the question is, can they rise to the challenge and can they match up to these veteran against these veteran offensive lines, veteran offenses to get the job done? Especially, I know we're haven't gone to the schedule yet, but early, like first 6 games, games 4 through 6 are your prove it games. Can you get those guys ready to go up against real man strength?
Yeah, let me say one more thing about special teams and then we'll get to the schedule. I do wonder what Kirk Ferentz is going to do with the special teams because as much as everybody wants to see Kirk Ferentz just as the bad offense, punt is everything type of coach, he's not always been that in his career. Like, to me, Kirk Ferentz's career has been much more defined by what are the strengths of my team, and I'm going to play to that. And when you have LeVar Woods as your special teams coordinator, when you have Cooper DeJean as your returner, like, those are the strengths you're going to play to more. Now, I'm not saying special teams won't be a strength, but I have a good amount of confidence in Kirk Ferentz for him to say, okay, if I'm not super confident in the special teams, yeah, we're going to roll with the offense a little bit more this season. People act like Iowa's never had an offense before under Kirk Ferentz. That's just false. Kirk Ferentz is willing to, work with what the best parts of his team is, and if that just so happens to be the offense this season, I have confidence in Kirk Ferentz to go out there and do it. Now, let's get to the schedule because this is interesting to talk about. You've talked about that Iowa State game quite a bit. Before them is Northern Illinois. They just didn't fit on the schedule here. I apologize. But then you have Northern Iowa, at Michigan, Ohio State, at Washington. That is a terrible gauntlet there to go through a bye week at Minnesota, Wisconsin, at Northwestern, Purdue, at Illinois, Nebraska. I mean, Zach, you and I are on record basically saying we think Iowa's going to probably win all of these games outside of at Michigan, Ohio State, and at Washington. And we're not saying they're going to lose all 3 of those games. But we are saying that if you look at Iowa's track record, you look at where Iowa State is at right now as a program, you look at PJ Fleck's record against Kirk Ferentz, you look at where Wisconsin's at right now, you look at where Illinois is at right now, and you look at how Nebraska just craps their pants every single time they see an Iowa Hawkeye on the field. I mean, they don't shake hands, and then they're like, we can't play against you. So, sorry, Nebraska fans will hate that, but this is an Iowa preview, so I'm playing to the Iowa fan base here a little bit. I'm very confident that Iowa, like, their floor this year is 8-4 at the worst because I don't see them losing to anybody outside of that Michigan, Ohio State, and Washington game unless you just have a fluke Michigan State game like what you had 2 years ago. Sorry to bring that up, Iowa fans.
So my only pushback to that is you talked about quarterback. We talked about quarterback being a problem. If quarterback's a problem, you can lose more games, especially if special teams is a question mark. So I won't say anything, like I don't think I'm going to go crazy, but I do think 7-5 is in play.
But I will say, I guess I can understand in play. But I will say, like, Kirk Ferentz has been doing this long enough, and obviously he's not lost his fastball. If anything, I think Kirk Ferentz has gotten into the best years of his career. I would never have guessed that the NIL and transfer portal and revenue sharing would be the best years of Kirk Ferentz's career. But it really seems like he's kind of hit his stride right now in this kind of era with all this talk. So I feel I feel like Kirk Ferentz knows his team very well year in and year out. And I think Kirk Ferentz is going to know if I didn't have a guy that I thought could play quarterback, I was going to go out and get one, right? If I didn't think I had special teams, I'm going to go out and correct that. I don't think Kirk Ferentz was going to be willing to go into the season without options that he trusts. Now, is his team going to be completely perfect and no holes? No, this is in Ohio State. But I also don't think that Kirk Ferentz is just going to, for lack of better words, punt on his special teams and just say, oh, I hope my quarterbacks are good. Like, the dude knows more than you and I do. And I think he's probably got a good idea to say, all right, I have confidence in some of these things that maybe other people don't have confidence in.
Counterpoint.
Okay.
When he needed a quarterback, he went to Cade McNamara.
That is true. That is true.
So,
and he also broke the rules for. He texted him 2 hours before the portal opened or something. I forget what.
We just gotta get Cade. Oh my gosh.
It was like if Cade McNamara was gonna punish a team for anything his entire career, he was with Michigan in 2021. Nope, it was Iowa for texting him 2 hours before the portal opened. Oh gosh.
Oi. Anyway, that's not to say that I think you're wrong. Like I have been, jokingly said, maybe not jokingly at times, that Kirk Ferentz should retire. I'm also on record of taking that back, but I would just my pushback is I think there's a little bit of revisionist history over the past couple of years. I think the past couple of years he's done really well. He's also stubborn as all get out.
Which is sometimes a good thing.
It's sometimes a good thing, but sometimes you can be stubborn in a way that actually hurts your team. And, thankfully, I think the biggest stubborn point, which you mentioned earlier in the show with the coach that shall not be named, they got rid of him.
Voldemort.
Yeah.
Iowa.
The Iowa Voldemort. But I think there is room for that stubbornness, I think, even with this quarterback situation. Or, at the very least, a miseval. And if there is a miseval, I think Minnesota's got enough talent to knock them off. We still don't know what's going on with Northwestern. I know you are not as high on Illinois as maybe I am, but I think at Illinois is not fun. So I just think there is room for landmines. I'm not picking 7-5, but I would just watch for that. Watch that quarterback battle. Is there indecisiveness? Is there struggle? That's all I'm saying.
Okay. My ceiling for Iowa is 11-1. Last season gave me a whole lot more confidence in Iowa in some of these big games. Now, I do think it's going to be hard to steal one on the road against Michigan and Washington, so I toyed with 10-2 a little bit because I don't know if they're going to steal one on the road against those two and Ohio State, but maybe they steal both of those on the road. Michigan this season, they have some good pieces, but it's also going to be in September early in the season. And then Washington, I like DeMond Williams, and I like this Washington team overall, but Jed Fish is not the coach that Kirk Ferentz is. So, does Kirk Ferentz just eat Jed Fish's lunch in that game? I know it's at Washington. It's very possible it could happen.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think 11-1. I think playoffs very much in play.
All right, so what's your rough record prediction right now, and then we'll get out of here?
I'll say 10-2. I think they get Michigan, but I think they lose back-to-back Ohio State at Washington. I just think, I think the progression will get them, but I think they're better. I think they might be better than Michigan.
I'm going to go 9-3. If it was home against Michigan and at Ohio State, I think I'd be much more on the 10-2 train, or home against Washington and at Ohio State. I'd be much more on the Iowa train there. But I'll go 9-3. But like I said, I am much closer to 11-1 than I am 7-5. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah,
me too.
All right, good stuff. Check out the rest of the season previews for all the other teams. Got a playlist out there with all the season previews that me and Zach are doing. So far, we have Illinois, Indiana, Ohio State, USC, Minnesota. We got more coming, so check them out. We appreciate you watching. Thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, let us know. 5-star rating and review on the podcast platform always helps as well. Appreciate it. Have a good one.